This is a third part on heading in the right direction for success, and also an underlying theme that we have is that success really involves having a plan and using a lot of common sense and I suppose experience to say whether or not that plan is sound, regardless of what happens. And ultimately, that success is not a linear line. It's not a straight line or path. It has many deviations and turns, and there are a lot of things that can distract us from our plan. So we've talked a bit about that in the last couple of discussions, but one of the things we started to head towards was about leadership values. Do you want to just start us off there, Chris?
Well, when we start talking about leadership values, it's sort of matched pair is the team's mythologies. And I use the word mythology very precisely there. A mythology is a thing that your team believes, whether it's proven or not proven in real life. And, over the last few years, the world's seen a bunch of people with different mythologies. There's a belief that a bunch of US people held that one person won the election over the other, even though the data said the opposite. There's a bunch of people out there who fervently believe that the vaccines and lockdowns are for purposes other than public health. And there's a group of people whose mythologies are that we need to protect people because public health is important. Now, I'm not saying those are right or wrong. They're just what those people believe. And in all of our businesses that we work with, the teams will have mythologies, things that they believe, whether they're true or not. And a lot of these mythologies can be influenced by our leader values and behaviours. Back in the 80s, our old mate, Elliot Jacques, the management theorist from French Canada, came up with about 6 different things that he said, these are the things that people put their mythologies over to understand whether your behaviour as a leader is something that's good, something that's indifferent, or something that they think is bad. When we're trying to change a culture, we're trying to show the behaviours that influence the mythologies that are good for your business and stamp out the ones that aren't. So, those leadership behaviours that people are looking for when you do something. One is, are you being trustworthy or are you being untrustworthy? One, which is one of the more contentious ones, they look at, is that a loving decision that you're making as a leader or an unloving decision? Are you doing something that shows some respect for human dignity, either with the customers or your suppliers or your community or your team? Or are you showing a lack of respect? And I'm very careful there not to say disrespect, which is different. That's farther to the end. A lack of respect rather than some respect. Is your decision fair or is it unfair? So, I punish you for a defect, but I don't punish Bob for the same defect. Is it courageous or cowardly? Do we stand up and say, no, that's not right, that's not the way we're going to do it? Or do you skulk in the shadows around the back as a leader? And is it honest or is it dishonest? We're making a loss when you're actually making a profit. So you go and grab some JobKeeper if you're in Australia.
Yeah.
So, your teams will look at your behaviours through their beliefs, but they will use those things to measure. So, some of the teams will have a mythology like the US election, that the incumbent should have won. So that the incumbent didn't win and you said so out loud with your mouth is you being untrustworthy. So you need to take those things into account. But in the end, understanding that not everybody's going to think your decision's good on all those continuum, that consistent behavior that you show as a leader to drive the good mythologies and drive out the bad ones, it's a real power tool to help you make things stick. So lean, you reward the right behaviors, you don't reward the wrong behaviors.
Yeah, and I think it's always a tough call when you're trying to build trust. I think about the respect, the fairness, those kind of things. Sometimes decisions you have to make in executing a plan towards success and to make improvements stick and to drive a culture where we don't roll things back through, the mythologies that currently exist, or through, just letting things lapse because it seems too hard, or we can't remember why we did it in the first place. There's a big part here about how sometimes for the leader, you've got to make decisions that are right for the team, but not great for some individuals. And when you're making decisions that are right for the team, I think it's potentially hard for some individuals who don't deal with not being the center of attention or not feeling like they're special, of being told, well, look, something is going to change, or you will need to adjust how you work, or you may even, your job might not become, might evolve into not quite what you thought it would be, but the greater effect for your team is important here, or the greater effect for the company. And so I think that for a leader, it actually takes a lot of courage to do that and not get caught up in what some individuals want to influence you on. And so the courageous leader is the one that builds trust with the entire group. The courageous leader builds respect for the entire group and shows love for the humanity that's in the entire group. And the courageous leader is very honest as well. They admit when things don't go according to plan, and they talk about it, and they're comfortable being able to share candidly those kind of concerns or those kind of shortcomings. They're not stuck in such a bubble or an opinion that there's no way for them to back out, and they're not held ransom by a few noisy individuals in the group who may or may not have the group's best interests at heart.
So on the values continuum, those individuals will always think that your decision is unfair and unloving to them through their mythology. The wider team might say, well, you showed trust, you showed respect, you showed courage, and you are honest. And that could be enough. That's a decision I made that not all of you, in fact, a lot of you are going to think was unfair. But I did it with respect, I did it with trust, I did it with courage, and I did it honestly. And the chips fall where they may there.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You can't have everything all of the time. And, myself, I'm doing a bit of work with the local community here, where some of the local community believe that I'm not showing fairness in the way that I'm putting it out, but I'm doing my best to do it in a respectful, courageous, and honest way.
That's right. And I think at the end of the day, if you are living those values as a leader, it doesn't matter what anybody says in the short term. In the long term, you'll be judged by having genuinely lived those values for the greater good of your team, of your business. And, there are casualties along the way. There are people who don't fit that approach of, we're all in this together. And sometimes that's what it takes to actually make an improvement stick. So it's very important that leaders stay the course. And again, if you want success, you've got to realize that success isn't a linear line, and it's more important that you have a strong focus on creating a good plan and sticking to a good plan.
I'll add one verb to that: consistent. So your team are looking for that consistent behaviour from you as a leader as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes, definitely.